reason why I'm down here is because this is a challenging year to know what to say on this Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes there is something we all need to hear, or at least are willing to hear. This year, there are at least 7. As much as I would love to talk to you about tshuva and about our wisdom of our tradition, about our soul, our minds are swimming with so many things that are going on outside of our walls. There is rising anti-Semitism. The image of a fringe minority, a vocal minority, unveiling their hoods and spewing their hatred on the streets is totally disconcerting. Is that what we need to have addressed? Or perhaps what it is like to live or to parent or just cope with the increasingly bellicose saber rattling with North Korea and its threat of nuclear war. Or the fragility of security with devastating hurricanes and shattering earthquakes. Or maybe we need to hear about what is happening to these Confederate statues around our country and the question of who owns history and how to address the racism that has shaped this country to include some and exclude others. What about our broken immigration system and how new bans and threats of deportation are scaring so many who are American or consider themselves Americans? And then there's the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War and the relentless status quo between Israelis and Palestinians that does not help Israel's status in the mind of many Jews, let alone the suffering of many Palestinians. Even though by many standards, Israel as a country is doing well right now. And what about Israel's delegitimization of the Reform, Conservative, and Liberal Orthodox streams of Judaism, raising the question of how to nurture and inspire support for Israel while cultivating effective criticism? When I first began my rabbinic life here at Mount Zion 21 Rosh Hashanahs ago, somehow there was less urgency about what we needed to hear. I have been listening a lot, listening to the many voices in our community about all of these issues, and I have been hearing concern, strong opinions, and outrage, and need for support. I have been hearing voices that reflect conservative perspectives about the responsibility of individuals to follow our laws and to seek to improve their own lives. I've been hearing other voices that reflect liberal perspectives about the responsibility of our community to support those who have been disadvantaged by other laws. These are not mutually exclusive positions, even though they can be. We need more spaces as Americans where we can talk beyond sound bites and to push against conventional wisdom, both on the left and on the right. I encourage each of us to listen to each other, to expand our circles of listening, and not judge based on the first thing said, but to ask questions of curiosity, to learn more. We need those spaces, and we will have them, but not today. There is a time for listening, and there is a time for speaking. Our tradition can speak clearly, even with divisions in our society. It can share values that transcend partisan politics without relinquishing its voice in the public square. On this Rosh Hashanah, rabbis from around this country decided to do something unprecedented, to speak common words from our pulpits. I will now share a message being delivered in synagogues across this country. It is called One Voice for the New Year, and it was written by Rabbis Elke Abrahamson and Judy Shanks with input from many. As many here know, Rabbi Abrahamson was Mount Zion's rabbi here in the 1990s, and I had the honor, the privilege, and truly the joy to work both with her and her husband, Rabbi Zinko, for my first 3 years here. The Talmud teaches, if you see wrongdoing by a member of your household and you do not protest, you are held accountable. And so it is in relation to the members of your city, and so it is in relation to the world. As Jews, we are held accountable in ever-widening circles of responsibility to rebuke transgressors within our homes, in our country, and in our world. One chutzpahdik medieval commentator even teaches, we must voice hard truths even to those with great power. For the whole people are punished for the sins of the king if they do not protest the king's actions by him. Today I speak words of protest, joining hundreds of colleagues around the nation in fulfillment of our sacred obligation. We will not remain silent. We will, without hesitation, decry the moral abdication of the president, who fuels hatred and division in our beloved country. This is not a political statement. We, like the prophets before us, draw from the deepest wisdom of our tradition to deliver a stern warning against complacency and an impassioned call for action. We call on you to rise up and say in thousands of ways, every day as proud Jews and proud Americans, you cannot dehumanize, you cannot degrade or stigmatize whole categories of people in this nation. Every Jew, every Muslim, every gay, transgender, disabled, black, brown, white, woman, man, and child is beloved of God and precious in the Holy One's sight. We, the people, all the people, are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of the divine. All the people are worthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rosh Hashanah is Yom Teruah, the day of sounding the shofar, whose piercing tones sound an alarm, express our fears, and especially in these times, compel us to respond with a resounding call for justice. The shofar blasts, tikiyah, the sound of certainty. As rabbis, we are from sea to shining sea, speaking to our congregations, accent of America, to declare in unison acts of hatred, intimidation, and divisiveness will not be tolerated in these United States. We stand upon the shoulders of the sages, poets, and rabbis in every generation who fought for freedom. We speak in memory of every Jew and in memory of all people who tragically and senselessly lost their lives at the hands of evil oppressors. We call on our political leaders, progressives and conservatives alike, to rigorously uphold the values brilliantly articulated in the founding documents of our country, the immortal declaration that all men are created equal. We call on every elected leader to responsibly represent our country's history and advance its noble visions of tolerance. On this first day of the new year, we are proclaiming liberty throughout all the land. The shofar blasts, Shavarim, sound of brokenness. Something crumbled inside us when we watched the televised images of Charlottesville streets filled with hate-spewing marchers. The wound reopened when, in Boston, the glass wall of a Holocaust memorial was shattered. And here in Bloomington, when the imam's office at Dar al-Farouk Community Center was bombed. How much more vandalism? How many more clashes? Which other cities? We must not accept or become inured by some warped vision of a new normal, of racist and anti-Semitic or anti-Islamic acts, or rallies popping in and out of breaking news cycles. Let us never grow numb to the brokenness, but let our pain fuel our vows to respond with peaceful protests, with public calls for healing, by building alliances and by speaking in unison with other minorities and faith communities. Neither silence, nor complacency, nor waiting anxiously or fearfully for the next wounding event are options, not for us. Elie Wiesel of blessed memory possessed a rare understanding of unfathomable brokenness. His memorable words sound a warning to us today. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. Let us interfere as Rofei l'shvorei lev, healers of the brokenhearted, mechobesh la'atzvotam, binder of their wounds. The shofar blasts, truah. The sound of urgency. The events of these simmering weeks are a wake-up call to our Jewish community. Racism is wrong whether it seeps into explicit anti-Semitism or not. The Talmud teaches that God created us all from the first Adam so that no human being could ever say, my lineage is greater than yours. But just in case we thought the white supremacists were after someone else, or that the Confederate flag has nothing to do with modern-day Nazi sympathizers, or that we were somehow safe in the fact that many, but certainly not all, Jews in America are white. Those fiery torches illuminated another truth, one we learn and forget only to learn again this day. If one minority's rights are being oppressed, we are all being oppressed. As Martin Luther King taught us, we are tied together in a single garment of destiny, whether we are the least powerful or the most powerful person in the world. The shofar sounds. Tikiyah Gidolah. The endless pursuit of justice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, the Torah admonishes, justice, justice you shall pursue, so that you may live and inherit the land which I, God, have given you. Tzedek, tzedek implores us twice, once to pursue justice in the way we conduct our personal lives, and the second time to pursue justice in our community through insisting that our government upholds justice and redresses injustice for all. Our sacred text reminds us that for a community truly to inherit its place in the world, thoughtful leaders at every level must be dedicated to equality and to unity. This ends the communal statement. A few months ago, Mount Zion's board of directors reflected about its leadership. about its place in our country on behalf of our congregation. Though unrelated to the statement I just read, the board decided it was dedicated to equality and to unity. Our board signed a statement called Brit Olam, a covenant with our world. Dozens of synagogues across the country and the Reform movement have done so as well, and we anticipate hundreds more will do so in the months to come. The Brit Olam states, across North America and around the world, vulnerable populations face profound challenges. As the Reform Jewish movement, we are committed to meeting the urgency of now with moral leadership through congregational and community-based action. The board committed to fostering a culture of sacred and civil dialogue in our congregation where all opinions are heard, to grounding any action in our texts and in our values, to acting in solidarity with vulnerable communities, and to building relationships across lines of difference in our local community. And finally, the board committed to this following statement. In keeping with eternal Jewish tradition, we commit to lead our congregation in advancing Jewish values in the public sphere. This is nothing new in the Jewish community. It was emulated, in fact, most famously by Rabbi Joachim Prinz, who was one of the most sought-after preachers in Berlin in the 1930s. He was exiled from Germany in 1937. Thank God. In America, Rabbi Prinz tried to warn American Jews about what was descending in Europe. And after the devastation of the Holocaust, he later devoted himself to civil rights in America. And in 1963, at the march in Washington, he was the only Jewish speaker. He spoke right before Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Rabbi Prinz said, "America must not become a nation of onlookers. America must not remain silent. Not merely Black America, but all of America. It must speak up and act, from the president down to the humblest of us, and not for the sake of the Black community, but for the sake of the image, the idea, the aspiration of America itself." Ours is a tradition that helped inspire and shape the values of America. Ours is a tradition that demands action and involvement in the world. Ours is a tradition that knows that justice alone will not create the world we want. Tzedek is justice combined with chesed, loving kindness. And it is that measure of loving kindness that makes all the difference. We plead with God and Avinu Malkeinu to deal with us generously and with kindness. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed. We seek a measure of leniency in how we are judged by God. We plead for chesed. We think this is what we must reflect in the world as well. The psalmist tells us that the world is built with one attribute, and that is chesed. The world will be built from love. Olam chesed yibaneh. The world will be built on words that heal, by hands that care, by eyes that smile. The world will be built by sharing these gifts that God has given us. Every community relies on passionate and engaged citizens. It relies on you to be insistent advocates for tolerance and enduring kindness between the diverse peoples of our nation. To pursue justice is to create a society that protects and enlivens every citizen and judges with loving kindness. Let us be relentless, tireless builders of that society in our city, and in our country in this new year. Let us build a world from love. Amen.